weeks ago. I said, I will make sure that our team immediately reviews this idea, that the Army Corps of Engineers is looking at the feasibility of it, and if they tell me that this is the best approach to dealing with this problem, then we're going to move quickly to execute. If they have a disagreement with Governor Jindal's experts as to whether this would be effective or not, whether it was going to be cost effective given the other things that need to be done, then we'll sit down and try to figure that out. And that essentially what's happened, which is why today you saw an announcement where, from the Army Corps' perspective, there were some areas where this might work, but there's some areas where it would be counterproductive and not a good use of resources. So the point is, on each of these points that you just mentioned, the job of our response team is to say, okay, if 17 countries have offered equipment and help, let's evaluate what they've offered. How fast can it get here? Is it actually going to be redundant, or will it actually add to the overall effort? Because in some cases more may not actually be better. And decisions have been made based on the best information available that says, here's what we need right now. It may be that a week from now or 2 weeks from now or a month from now, the offers from some of those countries might be more effectively utilized. Now, it's going to be entirely possible in an operation this large that mistakes are made, judgments prove to be wrong, that people say in retrospect, you know, if we could have done that or we did that, this might have turned out differently, although in a lot of cases it may be speculation. But the point that I was addressing from Jennifer was, does this administration maintain a constant sense of urgency about this, and are we examining every recommendation, every idea is out there, and making our best judgment as to whether these are the right steps to take, based on the best experts that we know of? And on that answer, the answer is yes. Or on that question, the answer is yes. Chuck Todd.
I just want to follow up on the question as it has to do with the relationship between the government and BP. Mm-hmm. It seems that you've made the case on the technical issues, but onshore, mm-hmm. Admiral Allen admitted the other day in a White House briefing that they needed to be pushed harder. Mm-hmm. Senator Mary Landrieu this morning said it's not clear who's in charge, that the government should who's in charge, that the government should be in charge. Why not ask BP to simply step aside on the onshore stuff? Make it an entirely government thing. Obviously, BP pays for it, but why not ask them to just completely step aside on that front? And then also, can you respond to all the Katrina comparisons that people are making about this with yourself?
Well, I'll take your second question first. I'll leave it to you guys to make those comparisons and make judgments on it, because what I'm spending my time thinking about is how do we solve the problem. And when the problem is solved and people look back and do an assessment of all the various decisions that were made, I think people can make a historical judgment. And I'm confident that people are going to look back and say that this administration was on top of what was an unprecedented crisis. In terms of shoreline protection, the way this thing has been set up under the Oil Spill Act of 1990, Oil Pollution Act, is that BP has contracts with a whole bunch of contractors on file in the event that there is an oil spill. And as soon as the Deepwater Horizon well went down, then their job is to activate those and start paying them. So a big chunk of the 20,000 who are already down there are being paid by BP. The Coast Guard's job is to approve and authorize whatever BP is doing. Now, what Admiral Allen said today, and the reason he's down there today, is that if BP's contractors are not moving as nimbly and effectively as they need to be, then it is already the power of the federal government to redirect those resources. I guess the point being that the Coast Guard and our military are potentially already in charge as long as we've got good information and we are making the right decisions. And if there are mistakes that are being made right now, we've got the power to correct those decisions. We don't have to necessarily reconfigure the setup down there. What we do have to make sure of is that on each and every one of the decisions that are being made about what beaches to protect, what's going to happen with these marshes, if we build a barrier island, how's this going to have an impact on the ecology of the area over the long term. In each of those decisions, we've got to get it right.
You understand the credibility of the team seems to be so bad at closing down that there's almost no trust that they're getting.
I understand. And part of the purpose of this press conference is to explain to the folks down in the Gulf that ultimately it is our folks down there who are responsible. If they're not satisfied with something that's happening, then they need to let us know, and we will immediately question BP and ask them, why isn't X, Y, Z happening? And those skimmers, those boats, that boom, the people who are out there collecting some of the oil that's already hit shore, they can be moved and redirected at any point. And so understandably, people are frustrated because, look, this is a big mess coming to shore, and even if we've got a perfect organizational structure, spots are going to be missed. Oil's going to go to places that maybe somebody thinks it could have been prevented from going. There's going to be damage that is heartbreaking to see. People's livelihoods are going to be affected in painful ways. The best thing for us to do is to make sure that every decision about how we're allocating the resources that we've got is being made based on the best expert advice that's available. So I'll take one last stab at this, Chuck. The problem, I don't think, is that BP is off running around doing whatever it wants and nobody's minding the store. Inevitably, in something this big, there are going to be places where things fall short. But I want everybody to understand today that our teams are authorized to direct BP in the same way that they'd be authorized to direct those same teams if they were technically being paid by the federal government. In either circumstance, we've got the authority that we need. We just got to make sure that we're exercising it effectively. All right. Steve Tung.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. On April 21st, Admiral Allen tells us the government started dispatching equipment rapidly to the Gulf. And you just said on day one you recognized the enormity of the situation. Yet here we are 39, 40 days later. You're still having to rush more equipment, more boom. There are still areas of the coast unprotected. Why is it taking so long? And did you really act from day one for a worst-case scenario?
We did. Part of the problem you've got is, let's take the example of boom. The way the plans have been developed, and I'm not an expert on this, but this is as it's been explained to me, pre-deploying boom would have been the right thing to do, making sure that there's boom right there in the region at various spots where you could anticipate if there was a spill of this size, the boom would be right there ready to grab. Unfortunately, that wasn't always the case. And so, this goes back to something that Jake asked earlier. When it comes to the response since the crisis happened, I am very confident that the federal government has acted consistently with a sense of urgency. When it comes to prior to this accident happening, I think there was a lack of anticipating what the worst-case scenarios would be. And that's a problem. And part of that problem was lodged in MMS and the way that that agency was structured. That was the agency in charge of providing permitting and making decisions in terms of where drilling could take place, but also in charge of enforcing the safety provisions. And as I indicated before, the IG report, the Inspector General's report that came out, was scathing in terms of the problems there.